Hi, I'm Jen Hurd, and welcome to the Thrive Through Life Change event, where we're going to learn how to regain powerful personal energy, create an inspiring vision, and a balanced life in spite of everything going on in the world around us right now. I'm a professional organizer, and I have been for over 30 years, and I decided to create this event because over the years, I've worked one-on-one with a number of clients going through major life changes. Some would successfully transition from one state to another, but other people, not so much. And so between those experiences combined with some personal experiences that I had, I was determined to pull together experts from all over the world who can show that there's really no major life change you can't overcome and turn into lemonade. So my guest today, who I'm really excited about, is Dave Sanderson. And Dave had a really interesting life-changing experience. He is the CEO of Dave Anderson Speaks International, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And on January 15th, 2009, Dave was one of the last passengers off the plane that crashed into the Hudson River, known as the Miracle on the Hudson. And we've all heard of the movie Sully, I'm sure. So he, after that, became a motivational speaker and a mentor and an author. And he's even been named one of the top 100 leadership speakers by Inc.com. So he's really living the life. And he has some really, really interesting thoughts on leadership skills and finding your distinct advantage in life and how you can use that to succeed. One of the really interesting things also about Dave that I'm particularly enthusiastic about is that he's raised over $14 million for the American Red Cross, because those were the first people he saw when he got out of the water after the plane had its crash. So I really want to talk to you, Dave. I'm so excited about this. You had, this plane crash that happened, and you say an interesting thing in your TED Talk that by midlife, everyone will be tested by a traumatic life event, which you call their personal plane crash. Tell us a little bit about that philosophy, but I love that. I love that idea.
Well, yeah, thank you, Jennifer, because we didn't know this pandemic was coming, and everybody would have a plane crash at all one time. So I don't know if I was prophetic or what, but I just learned that from the people I have the experiences around it. Most people have something happen in their lives that's traumatic, whether it's a heart attack, a stroke, a car accident, or plane crash, whatever it may be. So I just realized that everybody's got something like that that's going on. So I just coined the personal plane crash because when you go through a plane crash, you have no control except your mind. See, but so if you survive, you have to be able to do something with it. So that's how I coined it. But now, with this pandemic going on, we're all going through a personal plane crash.
Yeah, it's like everybody's life experience right now is something they can't control on a daily basis. It's pretty challenging. But that's why we're here, and that's why I really wanted to find some amazing guests who've been in this fight for a while, trying to show people that you can turn these things into a growth type of phase. And you talk about post-traumatic growth syndrome, which I really like. That way of sort of turning it on its ear. How did you come up with that?
I actually didn't come up with it. The story behind that was I got a phone call one day, right where I'm sitting today, and the gentleman called me and said he wanted to interview me about my experience. I said, okay, that's cool. It's AARP magazine. Now I said, I'm not old enough for AARP, right? I mean, what can I teach these old people, right? But he said, listen, there were 2 universities doing a study on you on this thing called post-traumatic growth syndrome. I said, what is it? He goes, they was really looking at you on why did you grow out of this situation where other people on that plane went into a depressed and or even worse state called PTSD. And so they were contrasting me. They said, can we interview about what you did to grow? I said, well, sure. I don't know anything about it. So I started learning about this, Jennifer. I'm like, there are certain things that we can do to grow from these things. And I unwittingly, I was doing them. So I did this article. And it's like all of a sudden, I was getting requests left and right about, tell me more about it. And I better learn more about this. Right. So that's why I did my TED Talk, because no one's ever really talked about how to grow. They talked about PTSD, but they don't talk about the opposite of it. Right. So that's how it all came about.
Yeah. Describe a little bit, too, for our audience about, backtracking just a minute, about what happened that day, because I love how you describe it. In your TED Talk, you really give sort of a feeling of what occurred when this all came about. You're just going about your business, you're on your flight, get ready to take off, and then what happened?
Firstly, I wasn't supposed to be on that flight. That's part of the backstory. I was scheduled to be on the 5 o'clock flight. We got done early that morning because we started at 5 a.m. that morning. So we got done at 10, and that's how I got on the flight. So I wasn't supposed to be on the flight. I gave up a first-class seat at 5 o'clock to go to seat 15A. So I was back in coach. I even gave up my first-class seat, so I was back in coach.
Oh,
so
wow.
I think I was supposed to be on that plane for a reason, but nothing extraordinary, right? I mean, and like everybody, I know, I won't say everybody, but most people don't pay attention on a plane. They go about their own business, right? They're ready to read, like me, I was reading my magazine, not listening. So I didn't really was paying attention until I heard that explosion go off, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, that doesn't sound familiar, right? Look out the window and see fire coming out. I was like, I've never seen that one before. But you know, it's still not going through your mind because you're just going.
Yeah.
Until all of a sudden he starts banking a different way. You're like, uh-oh, here's this bridge coming up. So you know, the whole time, you know, you start processing things, right? And I was in I was already in the business mode. I was coming back from a business trip, so I was like, okay, what's next? And all of a sudden you see this bridge is like, and you only clear it by 400 feet, and you're like looking down and see people's faces looking up at you, like, wow.
Yeah, that was close.
This thing's going down, and you know, so that I tell people that last moment is when you think you're going to die, and you have no control. The only thing controls your mind. Is you better get things straight pretty quick, and that's what I tell people. You know, because I saw the movie of my life pass before my eyes. I saw things with clarity, and I hadn't seen in 30, 40 years.
Oh, really?
And it was, and I contrast that with somebody who I met who survived the earthquake in Haiti, and she said that she had the same experience. That she thought she was going to die. She was seeing when her child was born, and this and that. I'm like, whoa, we had such similar experiences when that last moment of when you think you're going to die.
Yeah.
But then you survive.
Yeah.
So now you got other issues. You survive, but the plane's going down in ice cold water.
Yeah.
So now you got Now you got to go into game plan mode, right? You got to really go into action mode. So it's two different stories. I tell you, there's two stories. Getting down, the crew gets all the credit, but getting out is with a whole team effort, and that's where all these things you learn about being team members and how to focus and all these things come into play, all in coalescing on that one next couple minutes.
Yeah. Well, and you said in your talk, you said my mom's words rang in my ears. What did your mom say to you that you remembered?
Yeah. When I was getting out of the plane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When I got to the aisle, Kaylee, you know, once again, my game was to get out. Right. I heard my mom. I'm like, you do the right thing, God will take care of you.
Yeah.
And that, you know, she said that to me when I was a kid. But, you know, when you're a kid, you don't, it's like, okay, no big deal, right? But when you're in that moment, it's like, you know, she's already up in heaven, so she must know something I don't know, right?
Right.
So my mom was always had sage advice for me. She never lied to me, so it's like, okay. And that's why I went towards the back of the plane to see if I could help anybody, because back of the plane, it was a different experience, because they were about chest deep in water.
Oh, wow. So they were already up there.
Most people see the picture from the front of the people on the wings.
Yeah.
I show a picture of the people on the side when the bottom of the plane's underwater.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a different game back in the back. So so fortunately for me, my mom talked to me at that moment. I went in the back, and it's like, I got back there, things were moving, so I just got behind everybody else and started making my way out.
Right.
But based on that impact, the bins had broken open, the luggage is floating out, you're chest deep in the water, it's dark, so you're just sort of feeling your way out. So the first light that I saw was on the right side of the plane. I'm like, time to get out of here, let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
As soon as I looked out the door, and there was no room on that wing of the boat. And that's why I was inside the plane for 7 minutes waist deep in 36-degree water. That's how I became one of the last passengers out of the plane.
Well, that had to be very, very cold and very, very dramatic. Yeah, so hence your love for the Red Cross with the red blanket, right? When you got out of the water, that's that love for them, right?
Yeah, they met me on the shore in New Jersey. Two paramedics and one guy from the American Red Cross with a blanket, and they carried me to the triage center because I couldn't walk.
Wow.
Yeah, I had 3 Red Cross experiences that day, and
did you?
Fortunately for me, the first one was right there at the shore in New Jersey.
Oh, wow. Well, see, that's the wonder of that organization. I just done their first aid training with them before, but I know they have all kinds of first responder training and a lot of opportunities for people to grow with that. So if that ever is an opportunity for you audience members, that's definitely an amazing organization to become involved with, because again, something like this happens and you can step in and be that person for someone else. That's a huge, awesome way to give. So talk to me, change gears a little bit. You had some great, our prior conversation, we were talking a little bit about having a mentor. and the benefit of having a mentor to emulate or to give you some, help along the way. Let's talk a little bit about mentors. What's the benefit, do you think, of having one and finding one to help you move forward?
Well, thank you, because that's what my next book's actually about, Jennifer. Because fortunately for me, in 1983, I mean, I'm a little older than probably some of the people who are listening, but there weren't many jobs out there in 1983. Yeah. We're coming out of a recession, and my dad basically told me I had 30 days to get out of the house. My dad was one thing about my dad. I tell people, I love my dad, and my dad was a man of his word. When he said something, it was going to happen. And I had 30 days, and I didn't have a job, so he helped me get a job, and happened to be with Howard Johnson. And my third stop was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was the second assistant manager, so that means I had the second and third shift. I'm on low man on the totem pole.
Yeah.
And so, this happened. We had this gentleman that used to come into the restaurant with his wife, Bonnie. His name was Bill, and I met Bill, and Bill would come in and have his ice cream and coffee. We talk, and he wore a flannel shirt, right? He drove a pickup truck, and so he's just a good old boy from North Carolina. Until I find out a couple months later, he actually owned 80 movie theaters in North and South Carolina. And his nickname was the Sam Walton of Charlotte, where the guy you would never know was one of the wealthiest men in Charlotte. But fortunately for me, on December 23rd, 1983, he gave me an opportunity and asked me if I'd be open for him to teach me and mentor me. And I just did it out of, because my mother taught me you always are nice and respectful to your elders. Yeah. That's how I grew up, right? So of course, but I didn't know over a 14-year period all these lessons he was going to teach me. And I think it's the people who are successful, and I've seen this now, especially since the Miracle on the Hudson, the most successful people have somebody in their life. Yes. That they can go to and teach them, and they can bounce ideas off of, and they have trust with, and they don't judge. And fortunately for me, that was him. But unfortunately, in 1997, he passed away. But before he passed away, he called me to his office. And he was a beautiful old office here in Charlotte. But he sat me down. He told me he had lung cancer, which meant he was probably not going to make it much longer. But he went over to his desk and pulled out these notes and sat next to me. And he said, I want to give you this. I said, what is it? These are the notes that I wrote when my mentor sat down with me in 1929. Oh, so I want to give you this. But you have to promise me you will pass it on. Oh, so he gave me these notes, right? And it's like I looked at him and I knew I had gold, but I didn't know, because these are the things he was teaching me over that 14-year period. Well, he passes away, and fortunately for me, I had another mentor come into my life called Tony Robbins. And Tony, I was on a security team, and he sort of took me under his wing. And but I didn't do anything with these notes, Jennifer. I didn't, and until I was writing my book, Moments Matter. Yeah. And I was doing research, and I went over to my little credenza right over here and opened up and found these notes. Yeah. And I'm sitting here going, what an idiot. What an idiot I am.
I've had this all along.
I have all this knowledge, but then my mentor, my partner there, his name is Don Barden. Don said, God only gives you things when you're ready. Yeah, you were ready to have it. And that was sort of the genesis. And all of a sudden, I became obsessed, because I've committed now to teach this to 1 million people in 10 years. I'm going to teach and follow up on that promise, because, that promise is a bond. And I have not fulfilled that bond, but he gave me gold from 1929, and it's time now for the next generation to have that opportunity that I had. So it's I think it's imperative that if you're going to be successful, anybody, you have to have a mentor, somebody who's pushing you, who can push you, right?
Yeah, you really do. I think it's true, because even in my business, for the longest time, I was a lone wolf, and I did really well just off the sweat of my brow, of course, because you put your back into something, you're gonna succeed with the right amount of effort and the right amount of just luck and connections and whatever else. But until I got into like a coaching group and really found a strong, for me, like a women's leadership type coach to really press me into stepping into leadership, because I was comfortable without having to do that leadership piece, just working, doing the grind. And I think that was, for me, true, like an exponential growth in my business and just in my own personal ability, my confidence, everything else. And I think having those sort of truths that have lasted from 1929 even through all of this, you got to know those are gold, because you know, I mean, there's been many, many, many things happen between then and now, and for them to still hold true, it's pretty amazing.
Right.
So I think everyone will really be excited to see that. That's coming out in just a few months, the new book.
Yeah, it's coming out in September, October timeframe. That's correct. I'm really excited about it.
Exciting. So we'll make sure and put links to any information we have currently, and then we'll update with the audience. We'll make sure and let people know and send that out when it launches. So, but that's really going to be an exciting occurrence. So this is another interesting phrase that you coined that I like. So when you're talking about your personal mission and whatever, but you say that there's a point in time that changes everything. Like you have that acronym, PITCH,
Yep.
right? And then you can find your way and step into that purpose. So how do we know when we've reached that point in time that changes everything?
Yeah, that's a great. Thank you for opening up that distinction, because I really didn't put that together. I started thinking through things, and I was thinking, what made that point for me? What was that point that shifted everything? And fortunately for me, about a year ago, I was speaking out in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I had a gentleman come up to me who heard me speak. His name's Brad. And Brad, he said, listen, I listened to you. He said, I figured something out. He said, people probably think that plane crashes with that moment. He goes, but I realized after hearing you, it wasn't that moment. I said, what do you mean? He goes, he explained to me, he said, this is the moment that changed everything for you. And I said, whoa, because he got it. And all of a sudden I realized, I talk about distinct advantage, which really means what you're most passionate about and what you're uniquely gifted at. You put that together, and all of a sudden, once you realize that, that is the point in time that changes everything for you. And that's what happened to me on January 25th, 2000. It wasn't January 15th.
Ah, okay.
That's what I'm going to reveal in this book. What most people think the plane crash was, it wasn't. It wasn't. And so I think everybody's got that opportunity. Once they realize what they're uniquely gifted at, and they're most passionate about, that is when everything clicks for you. Just like for you, what you did when obviously you realized, I probably need some people around me that can give me some guidance. That was a point in time that changed everything for you.
Yeah. Because I've known, I've always made lists of what my gifts are, what I like to do, what I want to do. And my biggest goal was to be able to turn that into a business when my daughter was young, so that I could stay happy and have the time that I wanted to spend with her, while still making, I had my revenue goals and all that, and I would always meet that. But this now, that for me, even, I would say this COVID experience has another one of those turning points for me, because I had one of my clients pass away because she couldn't deal with, whether physically or emotionally, what had occurred with the lockdown and not being able to she needed some surgeries and different things. And because everything came to a halt, she came to a halt, and that was it. And, it just really, that's one of those turning points for me that crystallized that this needed to go to a bigger audience. We needed to find, a coalition of people who can speak about it and grow it to a much larger thing. And part of it isn't being in honor of that person, because she was a very, very special human being, but also just that, and I think too, like after you had some time to process, like I did, it took me a few weeks to process her going.
Right.
But then it's like, well, what does that really mean? And what can my particular skills and abilities do to then sort of amplify the worth of that person and make the point that, you can overcome things like this. You don't have to let them get you, so that's what happened there. But I think everyone can have those moments come out of times like this if they seek it out. But they've got to be looking. They've got to be considering that. They've got to open their minds up a little bit, to well, again, everyone uses the word pivot, but it's true. I mean, when you go to pivot, you got to decide which way to turn. You got to take a look at everything and make some sort of determination. So that's what I'm thinking there. So you've spoken to a lot of people, I think, who've gone through different trauma and different, really difficult times, obviously, because they probably gravitate in your direction with the extreme circumstance you've encountered, right? So how can our viewers sort of manage their state through this change that they don't have any control over, let's say, or even if they do have some control, like how can they manage their state through it?
Well, one thing I talk about this in my TED Talk, but I really expound upon it when I meet with people, is it's really basic, but the most simplest things are the ones that are the most effective. It's the meaning you attach to something produces the emotion of your life, and emotion is your life. So it's all about the meaning you're attaching to this. And that really came to life for me, Jennifer. I was actually in the green room of Good Morning America after a group of us were on, being interviewed.
Yeah.
And things were going well, right? We're in the green room, all things are happy. And this one gentleman just came up to me in anger. He started getting really loud. He never wanted to see us again. And I was sitting there going, what's wrong with this dude, man?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we survived a plane crash. We're on national TV, and my goodness, we're blessed. What's wrong with this guy?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then what I realized, I found out, is he was going through a divorce and he lost his job. And the meaning he attached to the plane crash was devastation.
Oh,
Or the meaning I attached, same situation, attached with a blessing.
yeah.
And I realized it all comes down to the meanings you attach. And if I can help people reframe their meanings, then I can help change the direction of their life. And that's what when people come to me, Jennifer, that's what I try to do, is I try to find out what the core issue is and just try to reframe the meanings for them. And if I can do that, then at least I can get them on at least back to, like sometimes my mom told me, sometimes getting to zero is a good day, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes just get back to zero, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all felt like we're doggy paddling for our lives at moments, literally and figuratively. But, if you can just get to shore and have your feet on dry land for a minute, that's progress. And sometimes we have to fail up. Sometimes we're gonna make, as we're going through the process, we may misunderstand something. We may, make a decision that then we later think, oh, shouldn't have done that. But how do you reconcile that too? Like if you make a decision, you go a certain way, and then all of a sudden you realize that wasn't the right choice. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I tell you, you must be reading my mind, because the blog I just wrote today is about this subject. And I talk about, in this blog, what I talk about is one of the things my grandmother, I asked her, because I tell you the backstory is she sold shoes, right? And I'm like 5 or 6 years old. I didn't know what selling shoes meant, right? She's a grandma, right? So I asked my grandma, I said, what do you do? And she goes, my job as a grandma is to make sure I can show all my grandchildren where the landmines are.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, whoa. And then my mentor told me the same thing. He said, my goal as a mentor to show you. So I think a lot of it is incumbent on all of us is there are landmines out there. This landmine we're facing right now with COVID, right? There's a landmine. And some of us, and my mother always taught me, Jennifer, I don't know about yours, is the choices you make in life have consequences. But if you don't learn from the consequences, that's your fault, right? So we're all going to make missteps. But, one of the goals that you can do and I can do, and why you're doing this show, is try to help people find those landmines.
Yeah.
Right? And hopefully give them another choice on how to handle the landmine. They're still going to make their own choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we got kids, right? I made a lot of poor choices when I was a kid, even though I knew what was in front of me, right? But you have sometimes, as you know, you have to fail to learn. You have to go through the failure, the pain.
Yeah, I came out of I was a very perfectionistic person when I was younger. I was very type A, and I wouldn't try things because I didn't want to fail, so I wouldn't step into things. And I've really changed my perspective on that now, because I mean, you've heard the phrase, you only live once, but it's true. And frankly, why not try? One of my other speakers, you'll see her in the series, she lost her vision at age 32. And she said, my mantra became, I don't know if I can, but I'll try. I don't know if I can, but I'll try. And she said, the more I did that, the more I accomplished. And I occasionally made mistakes and things didn't work out, but I at least tried, and it definitely furthered my cause. So I think that's another thing that I've definitely come around to, is that, you've got to step into it and see what happens. But yeah, you may encounter some landmines, but if you do, then it's pulling those other people up behind you, mentoring other people that are coming along. All it does is propel you forward. I'm in an organization, and I think for a long time people thought that everyone was attending the meetings was a competitor. And for the longest time, we would treat each other that way. And then more recently, we've really shifted the mindset to be, no, we're all doing the same thing. But if we all are out there learning and then we share, we're all going to move forward a heck of a lot faster. Right. So that's where I think people need to understand that, you're going through something right now today, but that doesn't mean that can't be pain for purpose, down the road. Fascinating. So I just wanted to let everyone know there's going to be a link on the page to the Moments Matter book. So if you're interested in learning more about the experiences, that you went through with the crash and the things that you learned from that, and there's other personal experiences in that book as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that will be available on the page here below. And then please also watch for the new book. We'll put some information out to our followers when that comes out in the next months. And that's going to have some of that amazing information that you received from your mentor, from his mentor, historically from way back. So I think that's going to be a really great book that will crystallize some things for people and really help them in the coming months. And this COVID thing isn't going away quickly, so this will be if we get locked down over the winter, if it flares up and we're home, it's going to be perfect timing for your book. Everyone will be home reading.
I think good bedtime reading, right? Good bedtime reading, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you got to put the good stuff in before you go to sleep, so your brain can soak it up. They say our subconscious processes as we sleep, right? So put the good stuff in then. That's the best time to do it. Well, thank you so much, Dave. Was there any other tidbits you wanted to add for our audience today?
There's a lot I could share, but I just want to say thank you. I think what you're doing right now is you're getting a message out to people who need to hear a message, and I'm honored that you asked me to be with you, because I think all of us have something we can share, and the more you open up what you're doing, Jennifer, to other people, you don't know who you're going to impact, and that's one thing that. One day you'll realize that person may be over in South Africa you impacted that you never knew.
Yeah, I know. And that's the joy of it and the fun of it too, is that, and I just don't care if I find out who they are, or, I wouldn't care. The thought is that you can put it out there and it can be absorbed by someone who might be going through something. That's
right.
For me. And again, it honors the memory of the person that, kind of kicked this off in my mind. There needs to be something out there for people. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll definitely be in touch. And please, audience, stay tuned this is a 21-day event, so there's going to be lots and lots of great speakers discussing things about life change and how to overcome these transitions with more success and more energy and a new vision, because obviously we're all in that pivot mode right now. So, all right, we'll sign off, and we'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Please come back and join us again.